Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Steven Pivnik. He's closed multi-million dollar leasing deals with IBM and Microsoft. He's also ran the Ironman World Championship and ultra marathons. He's summited expeditions and he's best known for going the distance. So, Steven, I'm so glad we're here in your New York apartment. This is awesome
Great
to
to be
have you here. How did you become built to finish? How did this start for you?
Yeah, interesting. I don't think I became built to finish overnight. I think my life evolved to being one that finishes epic things.
Yeah,
I started off by starting my own business.
yeah,
I got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug,
yeah,
which I inherited from my parents,
yeah,
and the business started to succeed. And then later on in life, I started to do other cool things like triathlons. Then I got into mountaineering,
yeah,
and I experimented with ultra marathons. So they all kind of built on each other, and each one of them I just enjoyed finishing and then starting the next one.
yeah, absolutely. Because you find so many people get so laser focused and they can't jump to the next activity. So you mentioned about your parents.
Yeah.
How did your parents impact you and help you along that journey?
Oh, my parents were a huge help. I mean, they were incredibly inspirational. We immigrated to this country back when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
We left the former Soviet Union due to anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
It got pretty bad. I can't imagine how bad it must have been for them to actually uproot
Yeah.
an entire family.
Yeah.
So it got bad. So it was they really motivated me a lot because they did an incredibly hard thing.
Yeah.
And I watched them, grind it out as immigrants in a brand new country in this strange land. And they did whatever it took, to put food on the table, to put a roof over our house. And it was just incredibly inspirational and motivational to watch. So I think that's where I get a lot of my grit from.
Absolutely. Because when you think about it, the five people we spend the most time around impact us, of course, drastically. So, with that being your parents and immigration and seeing them building their own businesses and their own lives of sorts, that's very motivating as a child. And what would you say those major values that you saw from them and learned from them?
I mean, I also have to include my grandparents. I'd be
Yeah.
remiss if I didn't include my grandparents because we were a family unit. I mean, I definitely learned love. It was a very, loving family.
Yeah.
I learned how to trust. A work ethic was a huge value that I picked up because there was no such thing as sick days, right?
Yeah.
They worked from sunrise to sunset, literally.
Yeah.
6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, no sick days.
Yeah.
And they did whatever it took.
Yeah.
So I thank them for a lot of things, but the biggest one I think is just work ethic.
Yeah.
I just work a lot, which is what I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I even saw when we were scheduling this podcast, I was like, "Hey, I'll come to your office early," and you're like, "What time's early?" And I'm like, "Oh, 9:30." Because sometimes you talk to some people and they're like, "I wake up at 11." Some people are like, "You're like Jordan, we need like early is early, like not early."
Yes, 6:30 is early. Not 9:30 is not early.
Yeah. So I knew you had it in you. So when you started your business journey, how did that begin? Because I know it had a couple variations over the 20 years.
Yeah. So when I started my computer career, I first worked for other companies and did that for several years. And then I just noticed that I can probably be doing a better job if I work for myself. One of my last jobs before going into business for myself was for a consulting company where I was a contractor.
Yeah.
They were basically a placement agency. They got contracts with large companies.
Yeah.
And then they found the necessary skill sets to staff jobs. So I was staffed on a programming job.
Okay.
And then I noticed that I'm just using round numbers. They were charging the customer $100 per hour and paying me $60 per hour.
Yeah.
Making a $40 margin and adding no value whatsoever.
Yeah.
Granted, they found the customer and they got the project. Great, give them credit for that. But months and months went on and they didn't do any project management. They didn't do any customer relationship management. I never saw my employer.
Yeah.
My customer never saw my employer. I'm like, you know what? If I cut out the middleman here and start up a company and go directly to these end customers and provide the same level of service, or I can provide a much more added value services, I can be doing better for myself, which is exactly what I did.
Absolutely. So when you were going through that process, because I know nowadays a lot of people are doing side hustles and kind of maneuvering their way in to finally make that leap. did you just cut the cord and then go, or you had contracts lined up? How do you think about that transition?
I actually cut the cord. I mean, fortunately, I was younger, didn't have kids yet.
Yeah.
Had a tiny apartment. The expenses weren't huge at that point, so it was a calculated risk.
Yeah.
So it was all in.
Yeah.
I don't think there was the side hustle wasn't invented yet.
So when you're going first days in, how are you feeling at this? Like, you quit your job, now we're sitting here and we're like, I need to figure out a way to get paid. How did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit scary. I mean, there was also 2 failed attempts prior to the one that I just described. There was a couple of versions that weren't as organized, I should say, and were a little bit more visionless in terms of just like throwing spaghetti up against the wall. Those felt a lot scarier because there was less of a plan.
Okay.
So I think the third time, which hits really successfully, went better and smoother because of the lessons learned with the first 2.
Yes. So, and why do you think the funny thing is, I was thinking about this, in schools, we're told don't fail.
Yeah.
But in life, it's like, fail as much as you possibly can. Absolutely. To learn.
There's so many people out there that'll say exactly that.
Yeah.
If you're not failing, you're not learning. Yeah. And failure is, you don't have to look upon it as a negative, just look upon it as a learning experience. Yes. Which every single failure is. Yeah. If it wasn't for all the failures that I had in my company, I wouldn't have grown it to the level that I eventually grew it to. Don't be afraid to fail. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important for everyone, because you have to take these lessons and these leaps and these calculated risks. Yeah. Otherwise, you're never going to move the needle. 100%. 100%. There's actually a chapter, and we'll talk about the book later. It's called DNF, did not finish. Yeah. Like, that's the most dreaded 3 initials in any racer's vocabulary. That means you didn't get to the finish line. Yeah. And some people relate that to failure. Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that if you did not finish, that doesn't mean you failed. That just means you did not finish. Yeah. Learn from it, dust yourself off, and start again. Yeah, and I think the biggest fears come from, it's funny because they came out with the 2 biggest fears, and it's fear of rejection and fear of failure. Right. Which is not surprising, because rejection, you have to go there, you have to go try to get clients, you're talking to the different businesses. And then fear of failure is like, what if I can't perform? What if I can't do this? What if this doesn't work? And we always have these questions about ourselves, but we have to push through this. Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's an old sales adage, right? Every single no is that much closer to a yes. Yeah. Now, I mean, I used to dial for dollars. Any real entrepreneur probably dialed for dollars and did cold calls or cold emails in their career. And yeah, you have to like accept these no's, because there's a yes there. It could be 100 no's away. It could be 1,000 no's away. Yeah. But there's just so many stories of that being true. Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, when you start looking around and you found your quote unquote tribe or your people or your companies that you work with, you start to realize, you're like, whoa, that person chose me over like 27 no's. That person, and like, you start helping these companies and these people, and you're like, you start getting more conviction and confidence in what you're doing. Yeah, the confidence is huge. And the best time to go out and get another customer is right after you landed one. Yeah. Right. So most people think, okay, I just landed a customer. I have to go, I need to get to work on that customer. I need to satisfy their requirements. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, go and get your very next one. Yeah. Because your confidence is at an all-time high. And that's going to show in your effort in getting the next one. Yeah. So the term "always be closing," I have different variations of it, but always be closing the new business. Yeah. No. Absolutely true. Absolutely. Because when you start thinking about it, the other thing I really enjoyed is, as you get more customers, now your risk is diversified across all these different areas. True. So you're not centralized on, oh my God, if we lose this one customer, we're out of business. Customer concentration is a bad thing. Yeah. If you're ever going to get a credit line with a bank, if you're ever going to go through any sort of due diligence for an acquisition or a new partnership, people looking at your books hate customer concentration. Yeah. That just spells risk. And it's so true. I mean, you can think you have the best relationship in the world with these 1 or 2 customers. There could be factors completely outside your control that will derail that relationship and dry up your revenue stream. Yeah. So customer concentration is a bad thing. A major risk. So
as you're going into this, you're looking at it, because the thing I found really interesting about your story is that you go from being the consultant to now stepping back a little bit. You got a bunch of employees, you're different hiring, and then you also had that software project that allowed you to create from there, which was a calculated risk.
Yeah.
So how did you think about that when you started as the paid for money and then the transition?
Yeah, that was a really interesting transition. So we got hired as consultants to build a custom project for a company.
Yeah.
In this case, it was a conversion tool.
Yeah.
A customer wanted to go from one email platform to another,
Yeah.
and they needed to convert all this data. So
Absolutely.
at the time, it was a super boring project. We were doing cooler things, but being consultants and entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
we weren't going to say no to business.
Yeah.
So we wrote this product. And then all of a sudden, we found out that other companies need a similar product. We're like, holy cow, that's called the software business. Instead of having to do this from scratch, we can just sell them a license to what we just built. And we did that. And that's when kind of our software business emerged from. And we started doing that more and more and more, and launched an entire software division.
So how often do you see this occur? Because I know your consulting businesses, because I realize that sometimes we put in all this work and all this effort and we think it's at a loss and we think maybe there's nothing to gain from it, but we do gain these skills.
Sure.
Like you said right there, like that software example was a brilliant example of, like, I thought we were just doing one project, but it ended up becoming a whole new business line. And this happens so much in life where we're like, I think I'm working on something, but I don't really know. So how often were you guys kind of exploring different risks and different options inside of your business that are like, maybe this is a thing, maybe it's not a thing? Because I doubt the software was the only one.
Yeah, you know what? I think in hindsight, we should have done it more.
Yeah.
Right, because we continue to do a lot of custom projects. So let me backtrack. A lot of software is built out of custom projects, right?
Yes.
Like, customer hires a company to do something for them that's super, super unique.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that they realize that there's more opportunity for what we just built. And
Yeah.
voila, software is born. Like our example. In my case, I don't think we did that enough.
Oh, really?
Because there could have been so much more opportunity to do additional things and create on other software products.
Yeah.
We kind of became a victim of our own success. There was so much need for that software that we created that we just sold a lot of it, and we modified it, we customized it for various customers.
Yeah.
But and we just became, and it snowballed.
Okay.
But had we continued to replicate that model that got us there to begin with, I think we could have done even more.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's important to hear from someone who had such a successful exit, because it's making us realize that there's so many iterations that occur that can cause us to always improve. So how did you get this mindset of constantly iterating and leveling up? Because like we talked about earlier, consultant, computers, you're typing in all the info, you're doing all the stuff. Now we're getting into sales. We're doing sales dynamics. Now we're getting into ownership dynamics. Like, there's so many different hats to wear. How did you grow yourself from like a few people to 200 plus employees where you're?
I mean, it was definitely an evolution. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Hindsight is always a fantastic tool. The growth could have happened a lot smoother and a lot quicker had we been more experienced. Yeah. But we were young. We were young entrepreneurs doing this for the first time. One of my favorite sayings is, anytime you do something for the first time without expert guidance, your results are going to be suboptimal. Yeah. Right. So could we have grown faster or smarter? Absolutely. But to answer your question, we just evolved. Yeah. Right. As business continued to grow, we started hiring more staff. Yeah. As we hired more staff, we realized that the owners, myself, we can't be coding all day every day. Yeah. We need to start doing more managerial things. Yeah. And then continue to add layers, beneath us. And then we realized that, we can't be doing sales all day long. We need to hire a sales force. Yes. So we hired a salesperson. Yeah. We hired a second salesperson, and then we continued to scale. And that same methodology was executed across, every single department, and started growing and expanding. Yeah, it's incredible because there's so many times where people sometimes they're forced into roles, and then sometimes they're building themselves into roles, and it can be very challenging because you don't know the skill sets ahead. So what do you think would have made a major difference in regard to
looking back hindsight, to have a exponential more success? Would it be bringing in speakers, consultants, these different people to help you?
I wish I would have been open to better guidance earlier on. Being a cocky entrepreneur, I thought that, hey, I built this thing, I know it all. Let's continue to forge ahead. Later on in my career, I realized the benefit of advisors and how much quicker they can help move the needle. So had I been open to that earlier, the road would have been smoother, faster, greater, et cetera, et cetera. So, but better late than never. I eventually brought on some fantastic advisors and then had this great exit.
Yeah, absolutely, which is awesome. And when you started, was it just you, or did you have other partners? Or
actually, I started with several other partners. I introduced this opportunity to several others that were in a similar boat that I was in. And we all started the company together. But that's a whole another separate ball of wax. I have a friend in Texas. His favorite saying is, "Partners are for loving and dancing, not for business."
No. I asked that because I know there's so hard to pull off the partner dynamic, and you don't realize you're married. Like,
oh, it's a complete marriage. And I've had great relationships. Some of the relationships with the partnerships, ended up in court. Others were really amicable. I'm still friends with some of the partners that I had in the business, but it can work. But that's a whole separate podcast.
No, absolutely.
Partnerships can work. Mine were sketchy.
Absolutely. I just know because there's just so many. The whole point is that, like, if you marry someone, you date them for a little bit, then you get engaged, and then you're married. In business, hey, you want to start a business? And it's like, that's too quick. You don't know each other. You don't know the dynamics. Like, and we always want to rush into those things. So it is better to just think about that area, which
there are books written on, how to give out equity, when to give out equity, how to form partnerships, how to come up with your separation agreements. These things are just so necessary, and versus just jumping in.
Absolutely. So then at 40, there's a major turning point. You start to get into fitness and focus on these different areas and these challenges. Were you thinking about challenges at that point? Obviously, you're on business challenges, but fitness challenges, were those relevant at that moment?
Yeah, I think there was a confluence of a whole bunch of different things. I mean, the business was going well. We were firing on all cylinders. And I think I was ready for another challenge, something big, so that was weighing heavily on me. Another thing that started weighing heavily on me was recognizing how much bad genes I have in me. Going back to my parents and grandparents, God bless them, they had it all. High blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, strokes, you name it. So I figured, and half of the stuff is like hereditary. So I mean, it's in here somewhere. So I figured, you know what? If and when I get it, I better be in the best shape possible so that I can fight it, because I don't want to go through the pain that I experienced, them going through, and then their eventual death. So again, coincidences, and then somebody at work does a triathlon. And I find out about this, and I'm like, wait a second, a triathlon is this this unique Olympic event that only chiseled athletes can participate in. I'm like, how does a mere mortal do a triathlon? And I found out that a mere mortal, anybody, can go to a website, and there's dozens of them. Just sign up for a triathlon and race. So I'm like, that's it. I'm going to turn 40 in the best shape of my life. I'm going to train for a triathlon. It was a short one. And that's exactly what I did. So 1 week after turning 40, I crossed the finish line at my first triathlon. And I was hooked. I'm like, that's it. I'm staying on this bandwagon for a long time.
That's awesome. Because I realized that physical fitness, mental health, business, religion, all family, they're all interrelated. Totally. And we like to think of ourselves as, I'm a runner, or I'm a businessman, or I'm a this, but you can have so many different roles. And that's kind of the thing I really want to help people with, is not pigeonholing themselves in, I'm just an accountant, or I'm just a bit. Like, we're all so much more than that.
100%. I mean, I couldn't agree more. The reason I think I liked endurance sports as much as I did, because they actually fueled my entrepreneurial journey. I found so many similarities: planning, perseverance, execution, pivots, setbacks, stamina, All of that is required in the business world. All of that is required in the endurance sports world.
Yeah.
Guess what? All of that is required in relationships, in family. So there's just so many similarities. And once you get good at perseverance,
Yeah.
you can persevere a triathlon, you can persevere a downfall or downturn in your business.
Yeah.
You can persevere maybe some, a rough road in a relationship. So it's so intertwined.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really building those values,
Right.
those proper values that are going to allow you. Because even for myself, when I started Edwards Consulting, it was that same year I go, I'm running a marathon. Because I sat there and I go, 26.2 miles. That's insane. Let me do this. So I started training, and this was before. I feel like there's so many running clubs now. I feel like there's so many people who are like, rah, rah. I was like, this was a few years back, and I literally trained with no one, did it myself, bought a mask because I was doing it in Lake Tahoe and I'm training in Tampa.
Okay. So that oxygen deprivation match.
Yeah, so I'm running around like Bane on this place called Bayshore at like 5 in the morning. I think people thought I was a lunatic, but I like needed to wear it. And then I went to the race and I ran the Lake Tahoe one. Literally only my parents came. Like no one, like I didn't even have like a support thing. Like it was just like you just do it because it's like this is what I wanted to do. It's not like, hey, join a club and now the club's doing it. It's like, sure, just do your thing. Like because you start to realize, and I think you probably realize this as well, that it's not about everybody else. It's about the journey that you're on with yourself that allows you to show up the best for other people.
Absolutely. And I love the journey as much. People think like I love to do these things because of the actual race itself.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, the race is fantastic, but the journey is just as much fun and it's just as rewarding as the actual race. So, all the training, the staying in shape, the eating right, the exercising, the, getting enough sleep, all of that leading up to the race is just as fun and important as the race itself.
Yeah, if not more, because I realized when I ran that marathon, I was like, did I really just run like multiple hundreds of miles for a 26-mile race? Like you just start to think about it. You're like, wait, every Thursday morning I would wake up and run 17, 18, 19, 20 miles. Like you're doing these races and you start to realize that you're like, it changed your entire lifestyle.
Yeah, you probably run like 400 miles in preparation for that one marathon.
Exactly. So you start to do this and you're like, wait, is this really about the run or is it about me changing my whole life and changing the way I view things?
Yep.
So for you, was it a real pivot for you? And
I mean, it was a huge pivot because I never had so much athleticism in my curriculum.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was work. I mean, there's a ton of family and a lot of friendships time. I mean, we're huge into friendships and we're blessed and wealthy beyond belief with friends and family and wanting to enjoy each other's time. But it was either work or family, work, family. And then I said, now I'm into triathlons. Now I got to find time for this.
Yeah.
That's a lot of swimming, biking, and running time. And as the distances got longer, I needed to. It just cut into stuff. It mainly cut into social media and television.
Well,
right?
that's what I realized is because like when you do it, you have deeper relationships. So like the time you spend on the couch watching TV from 8 to 10 p.m.
Right.
When you could just go to bed at 8 p.m. and then wake up at 4 a.m. to go swimming, running, whatever, you start to realize that those times are very low value, if that makes sense.
100%. Super low value. And by the way, Netflix works on the treadmill. You can watch YouTube videos while you're on a stationary bike.
Yeah.
You can listen to podcasts while you're swimming. There's a million and one underwater headphones that are available. So you
can still get that fix.
You can get all of that while exercising and doing something that's incredibly healthy for you. So it's definitely possible if you want to.
No, absolutely. I didn't even think about that because if you're still doing the same activity, because if you run for 3 hours, you're like, that's a long run.
Yeah.
But I never even thought about like, oh, you could just watch Netflix. You could just do your thing. Because usually I'm listening. I'm like, if I'm going to go motivation, I'm doing motivational stuff. Not like, oh, let me knock out 3 episodes of my show. Like,
no, I mean, there are some times that I love nothing more than just to be outdoors on the bike for 5 hours at a time.
Yeah.
I love those types of rides. But most of the time, I mean, I'm just going through audiobooks like there's no tomorrow, because a 5 hour ride is half an audiobook.
Yeah, it's a long time. And that's the other thing that you start to realize is that you can get more information, you can be more intentional with your life because you're learning things and you're taking it in at a different dynamic than, like, right now we're sitting. Sitting's cool, but when you're active, it's like, whoa, now you're really engaged and you're learning differently.
100%. And I think the mind actually, takes in more information when your body is pumping at greater BPMs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because you're more alive. That's something that's Tony Robbins would do, because he's like, do your thing. And it's like, you do your stance, and it's like, people are like, oh, it's kind of crazy. But when you're just sitting there sedentary, you're like, wait, I can't even show up if I wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. One of my most favorite features of the Apple Watch is it reminds me to stand up.
Yeah.
If I have like over an hour and a half, or I forget what the actual limit is, but if you're sitting there for too long, it says time to stand.
Yeah.
It's a single most favorite feature of this watch, time to stand.
Because it just keeps you active. It keeps you motivated.
Yeah, because you just get so into like whatever it is you're doing, you forget to just rotate the blood a little bit.
Yeah.
And just like a 3-minute walk around the apartment, get back.
Changes the whole thing.
Yeah, go back to it.
Yeah, and you'll show up better for these different areas.
Yeah.
So for you, it's not about the fitness, it's not about that, but it's about the journey that you're on. So what's allowed you to really, did you make friends in these different areas, or how did you think about that? Because you said friends and family is very important as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you definitely, no matter what you do in life, I think you normally gravitate towards like-minded individuals.
Of course.
So if you pick up a hobby, like you said earlier, there weren't as many running clubs back then, but there are a ton now. So I do a lot of triathlons. There's a million triathlon clubs.
Yeah.
I've got a group that I train with in New Jersey. I've got a group that I train here in Manhattan.
Yeah.
I've got a group that I can go train with in Brooklyn if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So there's pods of people everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you travel, there's a million and one Facebook groups. You say, hey, I'm going to be in Tucson. I'm going to be in Tucson tomorrow. If I wanted to go for a 20-mile run tomorrow, guarantee you I could find 5 people to go because that's how many people are in this specific hobby.
Yeah.
But anything you do in life, you just you gravitate towards like-minded individuals, and it's a lot easier to do things when you're doing things with people that are similar.
Yes.
Like some of my friends do what I do, others don't. We go away together. They'll go golfing. They'll drop me off like 10 miles from wherever we're staying. And while they're golfing, I'm running back to where we're staying. and we come back at the same time.
No, that's fantastic, because I've always had like similar experiences where it's like, I want to do my activity, and you just figure out a way to make it happen.
100%. You always figure it out. Like we went away on vacation once and everybody wanted to go hot air ballooning. I'm like, how long is that going to be? That's going to be like a 5 or 6 hour excursion, like early in the morning. I'm like, great. Drop me off at the bike shop. Well, I'm like, I'm going to go rent a bike. I'm going to go for a 100-mile run. I'm sorry, 100-mile ride. Yeah. You guys go hot air ballooning, have breakfast, and we'll meet for lunch.
Yeah.
And work out perfect.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want everyone to catch there is Steven just said on vacation.
Yes.
Because and this is something, like, I just came from a vacation as well, but I have to realize that vacation does not mean that we change our habits. Like,
right.
Vacation means maintain your similar lifestyle, just in a different location. That doesn't mean you have to work the whole time. It means you can enjoy things, but like, don't just go off the deep end and be like, I don't work because I'm on vacation, or I don't work out because I'm on. It's just,
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love laying on the beach for a couple of hours doing nothing, just like the next guy.
Yeah.
But I do get a little bit antsy.
Yeah.
After a while, I'm like, wait a second. I haven't run in 2 days. I got to get a run in, or I got to get a swim in.
Yeah.
My body is not trained to want to do some physical activity.
Yeah, because the challenge is you keep doing it, and most people don't realize it. But if we don't do that, then because the more we do something, we build it as a habit, and we get more reps, and we get more excited about it. And now it's a winning formula, and it's not just, hey, I'm just going on a walk, but it's like, no, I'm going on a walk. Like, I'm excited about this walk, or I'm excited about working out or running, because we build these habits. So for you, you mentioned earlier that you have wealth of friends. I find that a lot of people's circles actually get smaller. How did you broaden your circle and expand these different friend groups? Because the thing is, for adults, like, a lot of the time you're like, oh, like, yeah, you know what I mean? And they hang out with their family. Like,
yeah, 100%. I mean, I give my wife full credit for our expansion of our circle of friends, because she manages the social calendar, and we go out of our way to make sure we show up for, for birthdays, for anniversaries, for kids parties, well, older kids parties. Even older kids have parties. My daughter's turning 25.
Yeah.
Big party coming up. So she makes sure that we go out of our way, and I'm happy to attend.
Yeah.
And because we just have a ton. Unfortunately, it just makes the morning workout that much harder, but it's worth it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because you start to realize that showing up for someone is so small and minor. Like it might be a flight, it might be a whatever, but it really moves the needle for that person.
Oh, it's humongous. When people show up for me, and I hate having, like, it's funny, like we love going to parties, other people's events. I personally, my family likes it for themselves. I hate my own parties.
Yeah.
But if and when I do something and people show up, I am so beyond grateful for that. So I'm sure that's how they feel when we show up to their occasions.
Absolutely, 100%. And I say this because it's not very hard. Like a lot of the time we get invited places and we go, that's impossible. Like my fiance's brother invited us to Puerto Rico last year. And we're not like we're close with him and we're close with the other family members, but we don't know all of his friends who are coming.
Right.
And my fiance's like, I don't know, man. And I'm like, no. He invited us, we're showing up. Like, because it's just the right thing to do.
It is.
Like it's
and karma's a powerful thing. You show up for somebody, the universe will pay you back in multiple ways. Not only will that person show back up for you, other things will happen positively for you. I believe in that.
No, absolutely, 100%. So I just wanted to leave that lesson because there's so many of us who are like, I don't make new friends. I only have my 20-year friends, and it's like, no, we're constantly making new friends. We're constantly exposing. Like me and Steven are just meeting right now. Like,
it's definitely possible to make new friends. You just have to want to.
Yeah.
But you put that desire out into the universe.
Yeah.
And put yourself into the right circumstances. You can't just sit on the couch. That's not gonna. It's not gonna work. But it is possible for sure.
No, absolutely. Because there's so many groups. There's so many ideas. There's so many different things. And so, Steven, for you, was it kind of eye-opening realizing how many people are Ironmanning, how many people are doing ultras? Because you go through your life all the time and you're like, oh, like everyone's at the bar, like everyone's working, because you start to realize like whatever you see, you think is the truth.
100%. I mean, I've learned that it's a large and growing community. I mean, when I started Ironman back in, I think 2011 was my first race, there was maybe one, tops 2 races someplace on the weekends. Now there's 3 to 4 races someplace in the world every single weekend.
Really?
2,000 to 2,500 competitors.
Wow.
In every single race. So that's about anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 people a weekend that are doing an Ironman someplace in the world.
Wow.
And the same thing with ultramarathons. You show up to an ultramarathon and you think you're the only one crazy enough to want to run 100 miles. And you look around, there's 100 other people. Okay, it's not like Ironman, it's not 1,000, but there's at least 100 to 150 other people that are about to run 100 miles with you.
Yeah.
So, and you instantly make friends. The second that gun goes off and you start running, you're best friends with everybody around you. Because everybody has a similar mindset.
Absolutely.
And especially the late hours, like when you're hurting and like you have 20 miles left to go and it's dark outside, it's cold, and you're just jogging along with a couple of others. Instant lifelong friendships are made.
No, absolutely. And people don't realize it because the real way to connect with people is going through a difficult thing.
Right.
And that's why, like, if you have a club, like they try to have a high barrier entry, or if you have like college fraternities, people would try to make it difficult. Like they do these different things, or like even a football team, they're like, it's challenging, 2-a-days, whatever it is. They try to do these challenging things to mold relationships. And that's essentially what you guys did in an unforced environment.
You know what? That's actually a great way to look at it. I mean, I don't think they did that on purpose, but the circumstances put us all into that environment, right?
Yeah.
So we are the ones that are at the back of the pack for whatever reason. It's not a bad thing. We're still signed up for the race and we're still competing, but the back of the packers all of a sudden are hurting the most and therefore are bonding the most.
Yes. No.
And the amount of gratitude, I can't tell you the amount of races that I finished where I was either thanking somebody up one side, down the other, or vice versa, for getting me through the last 5 miles, or me getting somebody else through the last 5 miles, because there's just such a deep human need for connection.
Yes.
at that pain point.
No, absolutely. Like I remember I did it was August of 2021. It was and then we're gonna kind of transition into your other thing. It was I hiked Machu Picchu, the Inca Trail, 4 days, and I was the only one in shape. And it was me and the tour guide. My buddies are like dying.
Everybody's hurting because of the altitude.
They're like, Jordan, this is insane. I'm like, dude, just hike. Like, and they're like, my legs don't work. Like, they're not working. And it was just a funny experience. But once we completed it, we're like, we saw Machu Picchu, and it's like one of the wonders of the world. And you see this whole thing, and you're like, we traveled 4 days to see this thing. Not like, because a lot of people just get there and they see it by bus, and it's like you took the bus and you're like, oh, it's a couple rocks.
It's
like
a whole different satisfaction.
Oh my
when you got there because of physical exertion.
Yes, absolutely.
That endorphin hit. I mean, I just got one just by listening to your story. I'm getting chills because I've been to some similar circumstances where after days of effort, you're rewarded.
Yeah,
and that is such a drug. Like once you get that, like I did that again.
So for you, how was, we haven't talked about it yet, but the summiting. And you actually got a new mountain that you're
a little one. So with my business, we did a lot of work with Microsoft in Seattle, or outside Seattle. So I had a ton of trips out there, and many trips required meetings on both Fridays and Mondays. And instead of having to fly back all the way across the country to New York to fly back on Monday morning, I would just stay the weekend. On one of those many weekend stays, I went to explore Mount Rainier.
Oh, I've heard about it.
Which is gorgeous.
Incredible.
And I hiked it for a few hours, and I started doing some research, and I found out about a course that they gave on how to get to the top of Mount Rainier.
Oh, okay.
It's really simple. Anybody can sign up. Again, it's not this elite Olympic event. You go to my favorite guiding company on that mountain is called RMI Guides.
Okay.
And you sign up for like this 4-day thing. It's 2 days of training and 2 days of climbing.
Okay.
And it's basically, it's not really climbing, it's hiking. It's super, super advanced hiking.
Yeah.
I mean, you have crampons on, you have a harness on.
Oh, wow.
You're tied to each other.
Oh,
because
wow.
there's crevasses that you can fall into. And but they get you to the top, weather dependent, because it's really variable. It's crazy alpine conditions. And I got to the top. It was 14,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
And I said, oh my God, this is the most incredible experience in the world. Because of just this sense of accomplishment once you get to the top. But going back to my earlier point, the journey was just as much fun. The 2 days of training, going up this mountain, going up these various passes, the views, the scenery, the camaraderie that was built up with the other climbers. I'm like, that's it. I'm in love with mountain climbing. I have to go higher now. So fast forward, and then I can fill in more. I'm going to Everest next year.
Yeah, incredible.
So I did a couple of other large mountains, and got all the necessary training in, got all the necessary experience in. I'm not going to be one of these inexperienced guys that dies on the mountain, because those are the horror stories you hear. Somebody just plops down a ton of cash.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, there's, if you have enough money, you can find a guiding company that will take you.
Yeah.
And then because you're so forceful, they won't listen. They don't have enough authority over you to tell you to stop, because you don't have enough experience. Those are the guys that die. Yeah. So I'm not planning on dying. And if my guiding company says, for whatever reason, we're going back, we're going back. Yeah. My number one goal is to come back, not to summit. A summit will be great though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I started to hear about there's different people who, it's in Nepal, right?
Yeah.
And there's a Netflix thing on the guy who did the seven something. Yeah, no, and you start to realize it, and you're like, this is not hey, we're just doing this kind of thing. It's a very challenging task.
It's incredibly challenging. I mean, I've been to other mountains. It's the most exertion I've ever been through in my life. Yeah. On some of these days, because you're in a really, really harsh environment. Yeah. It's like -20 to -40 degrees outside.
Oh wow.
You're climbing up this mountain. There's less, the higher you go, the less oxygen there is in the air.
Yes.
the best way I can prove the point is when a simple hike, you're walking like slightly uphill. In a normal environment at sea level, you walk, you breathe, you walk, you breathe, you breathe, you're breathing while you're walking.
Yeah.
In that type of environment, not just Everest, even lower than Everest, you take a step, you have to take 2 breaths.
Really?
You take a step, you got to take 2 breaths.
Oh, wow.
You exert yourself any more than that,
Yeah.
you will faint. There's just not enough oxygen in the air.
Wow.
And that's and on Everest, it's 5 breaths. It's 1 step, 5 breaths.
Wow.
1 step, 5 breaths.
That's why it takes how long is the process? Yeah, I was gonna say, because I've heard about people going and it's like 2-3 months. Like
it just you can't move any faster because there isn't enough oxygen in the air to move any faster.
And then you got to acclimate the body, right?
Yeah, you have to live in base camp for a while to acclimatize, build up red blood cells, and then it's kind of like an EKG chart. Like you have to go up a little, let your body acclimatize, come back down halfway, let your body acclimatize, go back a little bit further. So you're going up the mountain this way.
How long are you planning on doing this for? How long do you think it will take? Or you don't really?
These trips typically take anywhere from a month to 2.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different factors that go into it. I'm planning on being there for maybe 35 days.
Wow, that's incredible.
Hoping for a summit, but my number one plan, like I said, is to come back alive. If I don't summit, it'll be a big whatever. I don't want to talk about it. We're gonna summit.
Now, have you used this for travel? Because I know you like travel as well. Like one of the things I've always found is like for example, like when I did that Lake Tahoe run, I ended up doing Napa Valley, San Francisco.
Sure.
Like so, I did the exploration, but it was led by the excursion because I was like, if you like, there's different types of trips. There's education trips. A lot of people view vacations, sit on a beach, drink, whatever. But then there's also a fitness trip where I view it as like you do some endurance activity. And then you go and explore the area afterwards for a few days.
Yeah, so I've done I think 17 full distance Ironman right now.
Yeah.
And many of those trips we've turned into little family vacations. Because like I said, Ironman has races all around the world right now.
Yeah.
You could pretty much, throw a dart at a country.
Really?
You can find an Ironman race. And then I just, love to make a mini vacation out of it, either leading up to the race or right after the race.
Absolutely.
Sometimes both.
Yeah, because you need to. Because otherwise it's not it's the journey yet again.
The journey, because otherwise, I mean, and I've done the other thing as well. I've done races where the only reason I'm in that city is for the race.
Yeah. And
those are tedious, right? You fly in, you check in, go to sleep, race, you're cramping up, get on the plane, go home. Just for the sake, and there's nothing wrong with that because some races I needed to get some races done to build up my qualification for the World Championship. But the ones where we made a trip out of and stayed extra days, or if not a week, those were the best. Yeah,
because it's just so much more meaningful.
Yeah.
And so after all of these journeys, I know you wrote your book, Built to Finish. And what was even the starting point on that? What caused you to even think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I sold my company, which was a big finishing event in the entrepreneurial world. I was on track to get to the Ironman World Championship, which is a big finish for the Ironman community.
Yeah.
And so I did my business finish.
Yeah.
I'm getting towards my big goal of the Ironman World Championship finish.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I want to memorialize my journey.
Yeah. And
I want to inspire others to set big goals and to go after them.
Yes.
So I said, you know what? There's no better way than to write a book.
Yeah.
So if a college dropout and couch potato can build and sell a big company and compete in the Ironman World Championship, there's no reason why others, can't set big goals and go after them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how did you break through the limiting beliefs? Because there's so many of us that can sit there and just be like, that's not for me. I don't think that's possible. How do you break through these limiting beliefs? Because there's so many of us that are sitting there thinking that. You just have to start. I mean, it's really that easy. You just start and you figure it out. Somebody that used to work for me used to say, an okay plan executed today is 10 times better than a perfect plan executed next month. So no, don't wait for that perfect plan. If I didn't have a perfect plan when I set out to
even though company number 1 and 2 failed, I still didn't have a perfect plan. I had a lot of lessons learned, but there was no perfect plan for company 3. It was just an idea and a concept and a lot of willpower to get it done.
Well, I mean, just relating to this podcast that we're having today, it's literally, we spoke a week and a half ago,
right?
And we're like, oh, we're both gonna be in New York at the same time. You're flying out tomorrow. I literally got back yesterday, and I'm like, can we get a camera guy? Can we do this? Can we make this happen? And it's like, we're just literally. I came in here, and I'm like, Steven, we're gonna figure it out. Like, we're gonna make it happen. Because the thing is that when you put yourself out there and you put these opportunities out there to make things happen, there's a beautiful serendipity of, I don't even know what's gonna come.
Yeah. And then the universe aligns and the right things happen. You'll make mistakes, there's going to be a ton of setbacks. You're going to need to pivot, but as long as you have like your mind on that North Star and on that goal. And one of the things that I talk about in the book, which I love, it's one of my favorite chapters. Oh, thanks. Built to Finish.
Yeah.
Available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold.
We're going to put it in the show links.
One of my favorite chapters in the book is called Envisioning the Finish.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of visualization.
Yeah.
And envisioning things. And
really?
And manifestation.
Yeah.
Quick story. When I had my company, all of our customers were in Manhattan primarily.
Okay.
So there was no such thing as Zoom, right? So sales calls, you actually had to go knock on doors and meet with people face to face for a sales call. I would literally, at the threshold of a building, I would close my eyes. And I would say to myself, next time I cross these doors, this is gonna be a customer of mine. And I just envision, fill in the company name, they're gonna be a customer of my company. And then I'd go do my sales call, and guess what? They became a customer, and it worked. So I did that I still do that. If I'm having an important meeting, I stop at the door and I envision the outcome of that meeting. So a couple of other examples. When I wanted to sell my company, I kind of launched that goal almost around the same time that I launched the goal of competing in the Ironman World Championship.
Yeah. I
wrote myself a check for a very large amount of money, and I printed out a poster of Kona, the Ironman World Championship, and I put them next to my computer. I can show you exactly where it is. And I had no choice but to see that in my peripheral vision all day, every day, for years. So, and I basically envisioned that actual event happening. Both of those events happening, and it took years because those are like big, bold, BHAGs, big areas goals. They both happened. So,
this is incredible.
Yeah.
And the thing about this, and I've realized this too, is that we need to just have the thought. It doesn't have to be anything else. We just have to have the thought. Like, I asked myself, how do you travel for 6 weeks straight? Because I was like, how is that even possible? This Friday, I'm flying to London, and me and my fiance are going to travel around Europe for 6 weeks.
Nice.
And we're going to like work, and we're going to do other stuff. But at the same time, like you just said, if you don't put it out there, then like I was trying to explain to my family, they're like, impossible. not impossible, but to them, they're like, oh no, you go on vacation for a week, and then you go home, and like you work more, and then you go on another vacation. And they're like, how is that even possible? I'm like, well, someone does it. Yeah. There's people that travel 100% of the time. Like
a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
And you probably don't have everything figured out. And it doesn't matter.
No, we only have two.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah, we only have the first place booked for like a week and a half. So there's literally 5 weeks that are unbooked.
It's funny. I think I'm rubbing off on my wife because she still is very organized. Yeah. But more and more I'm hearing, oh, we're just going to wing it. I'm like, yes, we're just gonna wing it. We'll figure it out.
Well, the best part about winging it, and like there's other people I've had on this podcast who've been to like 90 different countries, and what they ended up saying is, like, Jordan, you just gotta put yourself there, and then you don't know the serendipity of like what's to come. Someone might invite you to an incredible place where like you might have to stay a couple extra days, or you might have to travel somewhere you didn't expect.
Right. Exactly.
You can't be in control of everything, and that's the beauty of it.
The biggest thing with setting these big goals is you need to firmly believe in your mind that it's possible.
Yes.
If there's any doubt in your mind that it's not going to be accomplished, guess what? You're not going to accomplish it. So you may not know how, but you need to firmly believe that even though it's a stretch, you're going to accomplish it.
No, absolutely, 100%. And with these big goals, do you set big goals in all areas of your life, or how do you think about that? Because obviously there's the business, the fitness.
Yeah, so I mean,
because I know family's very important. I know friends are very important. I know religion's important. How do you think about these other areas?
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any specific goal on the friendship side because we're just, living that life. That's an object that's in motion, that's alive, it's a living being, right? Same with family, that's living, yes, do I want certain things for my children? 100%, but they need to set those goals. I can't manifest, a specific thing happening for them. I can steer them in the right direction.
Do you think setting the example has been helpful for them?
Oh, 100%. I mean, both my daughters have completed triathlons. My younger one has done the New York City Marathon.
Wow.
2 times. She's done a half Ironman.
Wow.
So, one is more, and so yes, setting that example and showing them what's possible in the business world is definitely helping motivate them. I just lost my train of thought for a second. Big goals. I'm trying. So I had this big goal, the business goal of selling the company and competing in the Ironman World Championship. So I'm trying to reproduce that.
Yeah.
So I want to get to the top of Everest, and I want to take my book on tour and speak on large stages to tell the story and to motivate large crowds.
I love that.
Right. So that's my business goal.
Yeah.
And in this. While doing that, pick up a customer or two, because I'm loving just providing advisory services to other entrepreneurs that were in my boat that are finally open to be getting advice on how to grow their company quicker and how to realize a much more valuable exit. So I'm hoping to achieve those business goals with the next physical feat of Everest.
Yeah, and here's the thing, people. I want to bring this to you guys. What is your big goal? Because if you don't have a big goal, then it's never going to happen. Steven's putting it out there. He's like, these are my goals. If anyone can help me, help me. If they can't, all good.
Yeah, 100%.
But if you don't know your goals and you can't share those goals with people, then we're never in the place of accomplishing what we want to.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are afraid to share their goals because they're going to be shot down. People will say, instead of you saying it, oh, that's not for me, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. Other people say, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You're never going to get to Everest. You can't get to Everest. Yes, you can. Anybody that wants to can. It may be a super long journey, but it's possible. But yeah, you have to break it down, right?
Yeah.
You have to break down big goals into smaller goals, and you have to schedule them. Like I'll just use my example. If I don't have a race on my calendar, I don't. It's very hard. Even though I have incredibly better hobbies and habits, of staying healthy, eating right, and training, I need to have a race on my calendar. Right. So I need to have an event saying I'm going to be at Ironman X or Marathon Y on this date. Therefore, my body knows that I need to be training, I need to be eating right, et cetera, et cetera.
I can actually relate to that because the last marathon I ran was the 2021 one. So it's been over 2 years. And it was funny. I was hanging out with my brother who I ran the marathon with. And he was like, oh, do you want to do this 10-mile run in May? And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna fly in here. I can't, the timing doesn't work. And he's like, oh, okay, all good. He's like, I just want to get back in the race. Because the thing is, he's like, do you run anymore? And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, well, I run a 6-mile run, maybe once or twice a week. I have a cool loop in Tampa, but that's not trading. That is not trading. And the point of having something to look forward to is super powerful.
Yep, 100%, and it's so motivating. And again, it just your mind is the strongest muscle in your body. So when you have something to look forward to, the mind just makes you do the right things towards that goal.
And you pick those decisions, and so how do you think about choosing goals? Because I know there's probably an audience saying that, oh, it's easy for him. But how do you even think about these goals? When is it because I know there's a point of I'm making a decision and we're doing this and we're taking action today. And then there's, I'm toying, this could be cool. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something that gets you out of your comfort zone. I think a lot of people don't even realize some of the benefits of goals that they may not be interested in right now. So people want to say, what I have no interest whatsoever in ever running a marathon.
Yeah,
it's not of interest to me. I'm like, okay, you know what? If that sounds too huge, how about a half marathon? And even though you may not be a runner, but you would be pleasantly surprised on the things you find out about yourself on your journey towards a half marathon.
Yes.
The amount of arteries, that path is going to open up are unknown to you right now, but I guarantee you that there will be some. So if a marathon is too big or Everest is too big, go to Mount Rainier or do a half marathon and see where that journey takes you. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. And also your mindset expands to what is possible. Because the reason I was running the marathon in the beginning was because I was like, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. Like
100%.
And it's that confidence builder to yourself because it's all in your control. Like obviously building a business is in your control, but like you got to knock a lot of doors and you can't make the customer say yeah. Like,
right.
So it's just, you have to get more people. But when it's just your body, it's like, there's no one to blame here. Like the ocean's not too wavy. The road's not too rocky. Like,
yeah. And if the knees are a big issue, then there's always biking and swimming. And if you're scared of the water, then there's biking. There's a million and one activities.
Yeah.
And even in the business world, I mean, there's a lot of people that want to have a bigger business or want to start a business. There's so many others that are already in that business, and they'd be willing to share advice. I mean, I have found that a lot of folks are just very, very generous with their time and their advice. And I mean, I benefited tremendously from advisors, both paid and unpaid. Because people just want to share, right?
Yeah.
I love the saying, a candle doesn't lose its light by lighting another.
Yeah.
Right. So candles that are already lit will gladly share. So if you want to do something in XYZ industry, go find somebody on LinkedIn that's already doing it and ask them to buy them a cup of coffee and just pick their brain on how they got started.
100%. I mean, this is literally the reason I do these podcasts is to get around people to hear what they have to share because it's fascinating. Like I've had people come on that did Leadville. Have you heard about Leadville?
Yeah, it's brutal.
He did it 5 times. I'm like, you're a sicko.
I love endurance sports. I have no intention of ever doing Leadville. That's crazy. For me to say it's crazy.
But that's what I'm saying. Like this guy did it 5 times. I was like, you're a maniac. Like, but what made you be a maniac? Like, you know what I mean? You start to understand people and get different perspectives. So I would never be afraid to even ask someone of, hey, can like Steven was saying, can you help me with this? Like,
sure.
How did this work? How did you do this? Because there's so many of us that just stay in our small circle and you're never going to learn new things from your little circle. You got to get out of your circle. You got to get out of your bubble and you have to expand and see new things because otherwise you never have those new experiences, which I think are the most powerful thing.
Yeah, 100%. Get life begins at the edge of it. Learning begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
So one I know we're winding down, but for some final questions, like as a college dropout, how do you think about learning? Because it can be very difficult. I was trying to explain this to a few people that the definition we have for learning is in relation to school.
Sure.
Most of the people, school learning, not true. Learning, we learn constantly. But how did you change your associations to certain words and allow you to develop your own journey?
Yeah, I was definitely of the similar mindset of like you're nobody in this world unless you have a degree.
Yeah.
Right. So I dropped out of school. I learned how to program professionally. I got a programming job. Guess what I did? As soon as I got my first job, went right back to school because I needed that. In my mind, I needed that degree.
Yeah.
That only lasted for 2 semesters because my career started taking off and I didn't have time for school and I totally forgot. But I never stopped learning.
Yeah.
And I became smarter and smarter as years went on.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's so many different ways to learn. I love Elon Musk's comment about like you don't need a college degree anymore. You can learn every skill set you need for a job.
Yeah.
You can learn on YouTube.
Yeah.
That is 100% valid. What YouTube won't teach you is the discipline of showing up to a certain program for an extended amount of time.
Yes.
So when you see somebody with a degree, they're not necessarily the smartest person in the world, but at least they've shown that they have the discipline to do something.
They have habits.
So they good habits and discipline and to meet certain requirements that whatever institution had of them.
Yeah.
So that's something that YouTube will never replace, right? Which is why, like, a lot of people, what they like to see on resumes that a kid, did dance for 10 years straight, or they did football for 6 years straight.
Yeah.
That they consistently repeated a certain, activity
Without getting bored.
without getting bored. So that means, okay, if I hire that person, they'll be here for 3 to 4 years hopefully without getting bored.
Yeah.
So that, unfortunately, nothing will replace. But as far as learning goes, there's just myriad of options out there just to gain knowledge.
Yeah. No, and then the other thing is, obviously you've done a lot of different stuff. How do you focus on constantly expanding your horizons? Because I understand you're around a lot of different people. I can't imagine that you're the only one who's like, I'm running there, Ironman today. Like, you got other friends, and I get that there's groups and stuff like that, but like, how do you stay motivated to go Everest this day? Like, you know what I mean? That's a big, like,
yeah, it's going back to my other point, like when you got to the end or the top of Machu Picchu,
yeah,
and you're like, oh my God, that feeling,
yeah,
once you have that feeling, which is incredible,
yeah,
the very next thing you want to do is review. You just want that again.
yeah.
I mean, you want that dopamine hit again. And you can just do the same thing again, which is always fine, which is why I've done so many Ironman. Just that in and of itself is fine. But okay, what can I do that's a little bit longer? What can I do that's even harder?
Yeah.
I did a race last weekend, which makes Ironman seem like an easy race. It was a 3-day triathlon.
Oh my God.
The first day was a 6.2-mile swim, followed by a 90-mile bike.
Yeah.
Day 2 was a 170-mile bike. And day 3 was a 52-mile run.
Oh my God.
Why? Because it's there. And to put it into perspective, going back to count, 44 people showed up for this race, not the 2,500 that show up for Ironman.
I could imagine.
Which is, Ironman is hard, but just to put things in perspective. So, like, again, once you accomplish something and you get that rush and sense of accomplishment, you want to do
you want to level up,
and you want to do it at the next level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Steven, where can people learn more about you? Where can they hear about the book? Obviously, it's on Amazon. We're going to put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So the book, thank you. The book is on Amazon. It's called Built to Finish. You can also find more about me and follow my blog on my website, stevenpivnik.com. That's Steven with a B, Pivnik. I love to blog about my various adventures. So this race that I just completed called the Ultraman. There's a huge blog post about that, and I won't stop doing crazy things. So I'm happy to share that information with you on my blog.
Absolutely, and I will throw all of that in the show notes.